Fantasy football draft season is heating up, so today we're going to look at the top 10 rookie wide receivers for the 2022 season. For the purpose of this video, we'll be looking at redraft leagues only, not factoring in keeper or dynasty potential. Before we dive into our top 10, let's take a look at some honorable mentions who should be on redraft radars going into training camp. As always, if you find this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe below to get all of our fantasy football content for the rest of this year. The first honorable mention wide receiver is Alec Pierce of the Indianapolis Colts. He figures to be used as the speed complement to possession receiver Michael Pittman Jr. He'll be great for the Colts in real football, but with Jonathan Taylor and a solid defense, the Colts are once again going to play through their running game, which will limit the passing volume and put Pierce in something of a Marquez Valdes-Scantling role from last season. Next is Jalen Tolbert, who should have immediate value with the Dallas Cowboys. Michael Gallup, who's the presumed number 2 starter behind CeeDee Lamb, tore his ACL at the end of last season and is unlikely to play in Week 1. This means Tolbert will battle with 4-year player James Washington for starter status in Dallas. With Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson gone, that's good news for Tolbert and could be a wide receiver 3 until Gallup returns, and then he may lose most of his fantasy value. Next is Velus Jones Jr., who is a bit of a reach for the Bears in the draft, but he now joins an offense that has little competition for targets outside of Darnell Mooney. Jones has 4.3 speed and could be a great deep target for Justin Fields, who should be better in his second year. But it is hard to trust the Bears offense to scheme multiple fantasy-relevant wide receivers. Our last honorable mention is Giants' second-round rookie slot receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, who could have a role as a gadget player. The 21-year-old was a wide receiver and a running back in college, has tremendous speed, good separation ability, and the ability to make big plays after the catch. With Brian Daboll coming to the Giants from Buffalo, it's possible the Giants use Robinson in the way the Bills were using Isaiah McKenzie, which could lead to some intriguing potential in deep leagues. Now, as we head into the top 10, feel free to comment below. Let us know any other deep league or sleeper rookie options at the wide receiver position that you think we failed to mention. Our number 10 rookie wide receiver is David Bell of the Cleveland Browns. Bell is very good at football. He finished with almost 3,000 yards receiving in his career at Purdue, and that was with a sophomore season that had just 6 games because of COVID. His poor combine numbers caused him to tumble down draft boards, but we've seen many players produce on the field despite not possessing salivating athleticism. The Browns lost Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, and Austin Hooper, and while they traded for Amari Cooper, their number 2 is currently Donovan Peoples-Jones, so Bell could have a big role. But his value hinges on what happens with Deshaun Watson or if the Browns trade for another quarterback. Number 9 is George Pickens of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pickens broke out as a true freshman at Georgia and has the speed and size NFL general managers covet. And that's great, but it doesn't mean much unless you could put that to use, and it's unlikely that happens consistently in year 1. For starters, there are questions surrounding the quarterback play with Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett getting the start for the Steelers. But additionally, with established starters Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, and Najee Harris, it's unlikely Pickens will be able to generate enough targets for fantasy managers to depend on him in year 1. Number 8 is Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions, who I know some people may have higher, but as of right now, we're going to keep him low on this list because he did suffer a torn ACL last season and likely won't be ready for the start of training camp. Williams is a dynamic talent, but Detroit is not competing for a playoff spot this season, so it's silly for them to rush Williams back given the kind of investment they made in him. Even if he does play, Jared Goff is not the quarterback to bring out Williams' skill on deep balls. In fact, Goff was one of the most check-down happy signal callers last year, which makes it a bad pairing, especially with DJ Chark, TJ Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and DeAndre Swift in the mix. It's highly unlikely Williams generates enough targets to be a difference maker in year 1. However, he remains draftable in leagues where you have an IR spot, or if we begin to hear that he could be playing earlier than we anticipate. Number 7 is Jahan Dotson of the Washington Commanders. He's a smaller player, but he put up exceptional numbers in college. And on the surface, Washington looks like a great landing spot for him. But don't forget about Curtis Samuel and Logan Thomas, who were both hurt last year, but are talented players in their own right. If these two players are healthy, Dotson will have ample competition for Carson Wentz's attention behind Terry McLaurin. He might be the number 2 target some weeks or the number 4 the next. And that's to say nothing of running backs Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic, who will also be involved in the passing game. That likely inconsistency keeps him down in the rankings, but he remains a strong late-round dart throw pick. Christian Watson should have ample opportunity in Green Bay. Between Devontae Williams, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and Equanimeous St. Brown, the Packers need to replace almost 250 targets and over 2,000 receiving yards. The returning leading receiver is Allen Lazard, who finished with just 40 receptions for 513 yards. Watson will be competing with Lazard and oft-injured veterans Sammy Watkins and Randall Cobb. That's good news for Watson, who's the second most athletic receiver in pre-draft testing since 1987, trailing only Calvin Johnson. Plus, he has back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback and will be playing in an offense that finished top 10 in total yards, points, passing yards, and passing touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons. The competition gap from where he was at North Dakota State to the NFL is astronomical, which should lead to an adjustment period, but Watson could be a great late-round pick with upside. Moving into the top 5, our number 5 rookie wide receiver is Sky Moore of the Kansas City Chiefs. Many fantasy managers are hoping that Sky Moore will simply walk into Kansas City and become the number 2 target behind Travis Kelce, but that's a lot to expect of the 13th receiver selected in the draft, especially since Kansas City also signed Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling in the offseason. In 2020, Juju Smith-Schuster's last full season, he caught 98 passes. And Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 55 in just 11 games last year and was pacing for 85 targets of his own. That's to say nothing of the 83 targets Mecole Hardman received in 2021. Expecting Moore to jump all of those players to become a dependable weekly fantasy starter in year 1 is unlikely, but the upside in this offense is clear, which puts Moore as a fringe top 50 wide receiver this year overall. Number 4 rookie wide receiver is Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. Olave entered the draft as one of the better deep ball threats in this class and one of the more NFL-ready route runners. The last time fantasy managers saw Jameis Winston play a full season, he led the NFL in air yards. In fact, he's never had a season in his entire career where he's finished lower than 4th in average depth of target, so the pairing between quarterback and wide receiver is pretty good. Olave has the potential for a Deshaun Jackson-type rookie year. Jackson finished with just 62 receptions as a rookie, but he had 912 yards. His 2 receiving touchdowns held him back, but the potential was there for a big year, which is why Olave can be considered a top 50 overall wide receiver this year. Our number 3 rookie wide receiver is Garrett Wilson of the Jets. Wilson was an electric player for Ohio State, and in his final season averaged 15.1 yards per reception, and fantasy managers should love his potential moving forward. However, immediate production may be tough to come by. For starters, the Jets offense has more playmakers than we'd expect with Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, CJ Uzomah, Breece Hall, and Michael Carter. Wilson could easily surpass them, but it's not going to be given to him. Then there's the Zach Wilson question. The young quarterback has plenty of potential, but fantasy managers will still haven't seen him carry an offense. He'll need to take a step forward to be able to support 2 or 3 weekly fantasy starters, which means Garrett Wilson is more of an upside wide receiver 4 for now. Our number 2 rookie wide receiver is Traylon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. A.J. Brown was traded during the first round of the NFL draft, and the Titans immediately selected his replacement in Traylon Burks, who just so happens to be someone many people believe is a clone of Brown. At this time, it's fair to expect Burks to be the primary option in the receiving game until Robert Woods is fully healthy. However, this is the role Brown found himself in for 3 seasons, and he never once hit 110 targets. In the past 5 seasons, the Titans have never ranked higher than 26th in total pass attempts, so the volume is a legitimate concern for Burks. In fact, A.J. Brown finished just 1 season in the top 24.5 PPR points per game, and it took elite efficiency to do it. So while Burks is a great option among rookie wide receivers, he should be drafted as more of an upside wide receiver number 4 overall. And our number 1 rookie wide receiver is Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. London left USC with a 27.3% target share, which ranked in the 82nd percentile. His numbers as a junior look like something out of a video game, with 15.5 targets, 11 receptions, 136 yards, and just under 1 touchdown average per game. The receiver depth chart in Atlanta is barren, and the Falcons have vacated over 280 targets from last season. There's no doubt head coach Arthur Smith would like to slow the game down with Marcus Mariota likely starting behind center. But the Falcons allowed the 4th most points defensively last season and also averaged the 2nd fewest rushing yards, so they will likely to continue to create a fairly fantasy-friendly environment for Drake London. As a result, he can be drafted confidently as a wide receiver 3 overall, with the upside to become a wide receiver 2. If you found this video useful, make sure to like and subscribe so you can get all our content this fantasy football season as we help gear you toward wins in your leagues.